discussing the hashtag Fees Must Fall movement of 2015 to 2017, a case of student-led social justice in South Africa. So, first of all, what is the hashtag Fees Must Fall movement? So the Fees Must Fall movement was a student-led protest movement that began mid-October of 2015 in South Africa. The goals of the movement were to stop increases in student fees, as well as to increase government funding to the universities of South Africa. The protests originally started at the University of Witwatersrand and spread to the University of Cape Town and Rhodes University before rapidly spreading to other universities across the whole country. Although initially enjoying significant public support, the movement started to lose public sympathy when the protests started turning violent. What was the movement advocated for? So the movement was more than just university fees, of course. Students were fighting for systematic change in education and society. It focused on affordable education, free education, as well as the decolonization of education. The immediate goal of the hashtag Fees Must Fall movement was the abolition of tuition fee increases, as well as free education at public universities in South Africa. Students argued that rising tuition fees were making higher education inaccessible for the majority of South Africans, especially the poorer population of students. Despite apartheid being officially dismantled, economic inequalities persisted, meaning that the access to education was still largely determined by class and race in South Africa. The demand for free education was framed as part of the broader post-apartheid mission to create an equal society where all citizens, regardless of their financial situation, had the opportunity to succeed. So three arguments that the students posed was that they were discussing the curriculum reform, meaning a more inclusive curriculum that reflected the realities, histories, and cultures of African societies, as well as the representation of African scholars, which included a greater emphasis on the work and contributions of African academics and leaders in global scholarship, as well as symbolic changes, which included the removal of colonial symbols on campuses, such as statues and buildings named after colonial figures, for example, the Rhodes Must Fall movement, which was basically very closely associated and linked to the Fees Must Fall movement. Background and key events of the hashtag Fees Must Fall movement. So, as I mentioned previously, it started in October of 2015 at the University of Witwatersrand, and that was started when the university announced a 10.5 increase on tuition fees for the 2016 academic year. And this announcement sparked outrage among students, particularly those working class and poor backgrounds who could barely afford the current fees, let alone a steep increase in those fees. Initial protests started at the Wits University, starting on October 14th, beginning with peaceful protests such as demanding for the fees to be brought back down, reversed, and obviously not increased. The slogan, hashtag Fees Must Fall, quickly gained traction on social media and as well as across other campuses in South Africa. The protests at WIT was basically the catalyst of the whole movement, which created a nationwide movement where all of the universities in South Africa did begin to join in just within days of the initial university starting it. Some of these universities include UCT, Stellenbosch University, University of Pretoria, Rhodes University, as well as UKZN. Social media also did play a significant role in this protest, using obviously the hashtag Fees Must Fall, and it did trend globally. Students would use platforms such as Twitter and Facebook to coordinate these protests, sharing their experiences in real time, organizing the protests, and just getting more people to come out to these and support for their cause and movements. A key figure in these protests is Fasiha Hassan, and she is one of the most prominent student leaders and activists to emerge from the Fees Must Fall movement. She, at the time, was a student at the Witwatersrand University, and she played a central role in organizing and coordinating protests, as well as being a very prominent spokesperson of the movement. Hassan, at the time, was a member of the WITS Student Representative Council, SRC, in 2015 during the height of the Fees Must Fall movement. Her role in the SRC gave her the platform to represent the students' demands and negotiate with the university management. As an SRC Secretary General, she was instrumental in organizing and leading student marches, sit-ins, and dialogues aimed at pressuring the fees and government to address the issues of these spiking prices of the university. She was very prominent in this movement, having many key contributions and achievements, and as a result of sustained pressure from Hassan, as well as other student leaders at the time, the South African government declared a moratorium on fee increases in 2016, and that basically meant that there would be no fee hikes for the year of 2016, which at the time was a significant victory for the movement. Another key contribution of Fasiha was her commitment to intersectional activism. She stressed that the movement was not just about education, but also addressing broader racial, gender, and class inequalities. The role of the government and universities in the movement. After almost 2 weeks of intense protests and increasing public pressure, President at the time, Jacob Zuma, announced that there would be a freeze on fee increases for the 2016 academic year. This announcement gave a series of meetings between the government, student leaders, and university officials. And although this was seen as a partial victory at the time, it did not fully satisfy the students, as their broader demand for fee education had not been addressed. Some initial university reactions included when the protests first broke out, the university administrators were largely defensive, often framing that the fee hikes were necessary to sustain the teachers, the higher education institution costs, as well as just overall the salaries of the teachers, the operations, and the research that they put in the money into, apparently. This position put university management in direct conflict with the students, who saw fee increases as a barrier to access to their education, as well as an extension to the economic inequalities rooted in South Africa's apartheid history. Impact on policy and society. So one of the most immediate and tangible impacts of the Fees Must Fall movement was the moratorium on fee increases for the educational year of 2016, which was announced in response to all the nationwide protests that were going on in South Africa at the time. And then in December of 2017, that's when President Jacob Zuma declared that the government would begin implementing free higher education for the students of South Africa from households that earned less than 350,000 Rand per year, which is equivalent to 23,000 USD. Although this was seen as a victory at the time, it did not meet all the demands of the movement. It marked a significant policy shift, yes, but it did help overall make education more accessible for the more poor and working class students, but overall did not satisfy all the needs that the students were protesting. The hashtag Fees Must Fall emphasized the economic struggles of the majority of South Africans, particularly Black students from low-income families. The movement shed light on the financial challenges students faced, with many unable to still, even after all the changes that the presidents have done, still they weren't all able to afford the tuition, accommodation, textbooks, and then other costs associated with attending university. The Fees Must Fall movement also left an indelible mark on South African society by transforming higher education policy, sparking conversations about economic inequality and race, and empowering a new generation of politically conscious youth. Its influence extended beyond national borders, connecting with global movements that challenge educational and social injustices, making this one of the most powerful and significant social injustice movements post-apartheid South Africa. Thank you. And these are the sources.